A few months ago, I hired a video editor. Came highly recommended, good portfolio, reasonable rate. I sent him a project, some talking head footage, simple edits, nothing crazy. He came back with a rough cut and I could immediately tell something was off. The AI-generated elements looked cheap. Artifacts everywhere. The kind of output you'd expect from a tool that's 2 years behind. So I asked him, what AI tool did you use for this? And he named a platform I recognized. Except he was using a version that had been completely superseded. He didn't know better tools existed. He hadn't kept up. That's when I made a decision. From that point on, AI fluency would be part of every hire. Here's the thing. We're past the point where do you use AI is a useful question. Everybody says yes. That's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, are you current? Do you know what the best tools are right now, and do you know how to get useful output from them, or are you running a workflow you set up in 2023 and haven't touched since? This matters more than it sounds. The gap between someone using a current model versus one that's a generation behind isn't a small gap. It shows up in the quality of the work, in how long things take, and in whether they even catch when the AI gets something wrong. Because AI output can look completely plausible and be completely wrong, and you need someone who knows enough to notice. If a contractor is doing AI-assisted work for me, I need to know they're not flying blind. Let me go back to the editor story, because the details matter. When I screened him, I asked about his workflow and he mentioned AI in passing, said he uses it to speed things up. That sounded fine. I didn't dig in. The project involved some AI-enhanced visuals. Background cleanup, generated elements for a title sequence. When I got the rough cut back, it was immediately obvious something was off. The generated elements had that telltale look, not quite right, slightly uncanny. The kind of output that would have been impressive 2 years ago but looks amateurish now. I asked him which tool he used. He named a platform I knew, but the version he was on had been completely superseded. A much newer model existed that produced dramatically better output. He just hadn't updated his workflow. Hadn't checked. Hadn't kept up. And here's the part one keep coming back to, it wasn't intentional. He wasn't cutting corners. He genuinely thought he was using a solid AI workflow. He just hadn't noticed the ground had shifted. That's the risk with any contractor working independently on their own tools. So after that experience, I put together a simple framework. It's not a formal test. It's a few questions I work into every interview or contractor screening call now, and the answers tell me a lot. I'm not looking for someone who can recite model release dates or explain transformer architecture. I'm looking for someone who is actively paying attention to the space, using tools intelligently, and thinking critically about the output they get. Here's what I ask. First question, what AI tools are you currently using, and how often do you use them? I want specifics here. Not I use ChatGPT sometimes. I want to know which tools, which models if they know them, what they use each one for, and how often. Someone who's genuinely fluent will give me a list and have opinions. They'll say something like, I use Claude for long-form drafts because it handles context better, I use a different tool for image work, I've been testing this new thing for X. That kind of answer tells me they're active, they're comparing, they have a workflow. Someone who gives me a vague answer, yeah I use AI, ChatGPT mostly, that's a yellow flag. It doesn't disqualify them, but I want to probe further. Second question, what AI tool or model came out recently that you're excited about, or one that disappointed you? This is my are you paying attention question. Someone who's genuinely keeping up with the space will have an answer. Not necessarily a polished answer, just an honest one. They might say they were excited about a new model release, or that they tried something that got a lot of hype and found it underwhelming for their actual use case. If someone draws a blank, or gives me an answer about something that was news a year ago, that tells me they're not tracking the space in real time. which means their AI workflow is probably stale too. Third question, walk me through how you'd use AI on a real task from this role. I make this specific to the actual work. Writer? Draft a 1,000-word piece on this topic, walk me through your process. Developer? Here's a problem, how do you approach it with AI? What I'm listening for is whether they describe a thoughtful process or just describe dumping something into a chat box and copying the output. Good AI users treat it as a collaborator, they give context, they iterate, they verify. They know where their particular tool tends to go wrong. I'd just ask it to write the article and clean it up is a very different answer than someone who walks through their prompting approach, how they'd verify facts, and where they'd override the AI entirely. Fourth question, have you ever had AI produce something that looked right but was wrong? What happened? This one is about judgment and skepticism. Anyone who's used AI seriously has a story like this. A confident hallucination. A generated image that had 6 fingers. Code that ran but had a subtle bug. A summary that sounded authoritative but missed the point. I want to know if they've encountered this, and more importantly, how they think about it. Someone who understands AI's failure modes is someone who can work with AI responsibly. Someone who hasn't run into this, or doesn't think it's a big deal, is someone whose AI-assisted work I'm going to have to double-check constantly. Fifth question, and I use this one selectively for roles where AI is central. Show me something you've produced with AI assistance and tell me what you contributed versus what the AI did. This is the hardest question to fake. Describing a workflow in the abstract is easy. Pointing to real work and breaking down the collaboration, what context you gave, where you steered it, what you threw out, that takes actual experience. People using AI as a force multiplier for real skills can answer this clearly. People using AI to cover for skills they don't have tend to get vague fast. So what does good AI fluency actually look like in 2026? Based on everyone I've hired and screened over the past year, here's what the strong candidates have in common. They use multiple tools. They're not loyal to one platform, they pick the right tool for the job. They know what models they're running on, roughly. They might not know every version number, but they know the difference between a frontier model and a legacy one, and they care about that distinction. They're skeptical. They treat AI output as a first draft, not a final product. They have a verification step. They're current. They're in communities, reading updates, or at minimum they've noticed when their tools get better. They're not running on a workflow they set up in 2023 and haven't touched since. And they have opinions. They'll tell you why they prefer one tool over another for specific work. That specificity is the signal. If you're hiring anyone right now, contractors, employees, freelancers, I'd seriously consider adding a few of these questions to your process. You don't need to quiz them on model architecture. You just need to know they're paying attention and using these tools thoughtfully. The people who are. They're genuinely faster, more capable, and more valuable than they would have been a couple of years ago. The people who aren't, or who think they are but haven't kept up, that gap shows in the work. If this was useful, subscribe. I put out videos on using AI tools practically, for people running businesses, managing teams, and doing actual work. No hype, no theory. See you in the next one.